Anticipation.
Legos.
Stupidity.
Difficulties.
How are these four concepts relatively related? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the show. We're your hosts for today. I'm Tarrie.
I'm Troy.
I'm Tarrie.
And I'm Trudy.
Today we'll be talking about the second phase of getting started, which is preparation. So before we get into it, guys, how are you doing? How have you been doing?
I've been good. I've been pretty good. I was just adjusting the phaser thing, but yeah, I've been good. I've been working on my podcast and working on just how the whole show is gonna work out and all that stuff. I came up with a cool name. Well,
Okay.
I saw Trudy working on something and it said
Fulfillment.
Yeah, fulfillment, right? And then for the title of my show, I want it to be called Fulfillment, but with full, then dot, then film, and then ENT, right?
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
that's
that's
good.
cool. I like
yeah,
that.
Yeah, so I started with that. I like that whole concept and idea. So I'm just going down that whole path because my show is about, again, discussing the themes and
Yeah.
diving deep into those things. And the goal is for my audience to gain some sense of fulfillment
And be entertained, right?
and be entertained. Yeah.
That's good stuff. What about you, Terry?
I've
How
been
you
good. I haven't really been working on my podcast per se, but this week actually because I love running or whatnot, I did some personal bests.
Oh, that's
so
good.
Nice.
Happy with that. I did my fastest 2.4K. One of my fastest 10K. I'm happy with the progression I've been making so far. So
Okay, so you're getting to the point where you keep improving until you get eventually to a peak or something.
yeah. I have to work out on some new stretching because my legs have been hurting me recently, but so I have to just find new methods of stretching and stuff like that, so my leg don't hurt as much as it does. But no, I've been good. Been happy with the progression so far.
That's good.
Good. Me this week was about, I guess, focusing on getting our artwork, the podcast cover art done.
Which looks good, by the way. It
Yeah.
looks really
Thanks.
good.
I mean, you guys know, the audience knows.
Yeah, it looks really
I hope you
good.
guys like it. So just working on that. And it just felt good knowing that, we're getting started and
Yeah.
actually, putting in the work and kind of preparing for the next phase for the podcast.
Good
Yeah.
stuff. Well, it's all related to, I guess we've been really busy just doing stuff related to the podcast lately, just in general. But so this week I started back work because we were off,
Yeah.
due to the coronavirus and stuff. But we're finally back to work, and but even at work, I was taking some time to work on stuff like the website and stuff. I got the hosting set up. I got the website started. I got the template that we're gonna use. We just need all the pictures and stuff to get it together.
How does it look? I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I haven't I've gotten the team and stuff, so it's gonna be because we have multiple podcasts. It's gonna be an area where for all the different podcasts. So any of our family, you guys are there, you can come on and check out all the different podcasts we have rather than it being separate for each one.
Okay.
It's gonna be all together. So
So it's a hub kind of.
yeah, like a hub.
That's pretty cool.
So, I hope it goes well, and it's still in the initial phase,
yeah.
but that's what I've been working on and just kind of thinking of how can we get our voices out there, because I do think we all have a lot of really good stuff to say in our different podcasts. So
And when that is done, that'll be when we're posting this podcast, right?
yeah.
Okay,
That's
so
crazy.
guys, the link is gonna be right here somewhere. I'm gonna just put it here. So you
Yeah.
guys could check it out.
Yep. So, and yeah, it's relatively related.com, but you would know that by then. It would be, as Troy
And you
said.
know that because it's right here. So click on, follow this link.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's been a good week, productive week, and just seeing, just having everyone working on different things. It's kind of motivating because, like Terry's working on the marketing stuff. Trudy's working on the art. Troy's putting it all together. And, so it's kind of, it motivates us to kind of keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
So, as I mentioned today, we're talking about preparation, that second phase in getting started. So, my word that I have for this today is anticipation. And again, as you know, our concept is to try to bring it all together.
Yeah.
So we'll see how we bring all the four words together. But in terms of anticipation, there was a question I had. As you've been preparing for this project you're about to tackle, do you normally think of the problems you might encounter? Like, what are some of the problems you might encounter in terms of preparing or doing this task?
For me, I think the first thing that always comes to mind is like, how are we gonna get our podcast out there? Like, how are we gonna get people to actually download and listen to the podcast? So that's something that I'm like anticipating, like what problems may come around that. Like, how do we market better? How do we get our name out there? That's the main thing for me.
Troy, do you anticipate any problems for your podcast?
Yeah, so this week I was actually thinking about that. The one problem I feel like I might come up with is like running out of topics. And I know it sounds weird, but like I want this podcast to go well into like the thousands, like-
Yeah.
So I guess finding a way to look at my different themes in a unique perspective, so that way I don't really like, say if I'm talking about anger, we'll talk about anger from the perspective of like a father figure or something, or anger from the perspective of a child or whatever it is, right? So I feel like if I'm looking at it from different perspectives, then I could like revisit certain themes again and
Go back to it.
go back to it. Yeah, but that's my one problem, like running out of things.
Yeah.
That's a big one, though. I'm
Yeah.
sure, like, everyone thinks, like, what am I going to talk about? Because eventually you start thinking, do we have enough topic to keep
Yeah.
going, right?
Because like I'm trying to think of the first like 4 topics, because if you're putting out a podcast, you want to put out
At least,
at least a few to begin with, right? And I'm just like, man, like these 4 are very broad, so I'm just trying to figure out how to like make it less, or like make it more
Narrow it
specific.
down,
Narrow it down.
Yeah, and like the reason I ask is because I often think about that, and I know for me, like looking at some of the YouTubers I followed or like followed for years now, there's this guy, I think it's Nigga Higa, right? Like that guy. You remember that? No, Troy, it's not.
It's just a safe space. I don't appreciate
But you know who I'm talking
I
about,
know.
right?
Niga
Niga Higa, yeah. So
I was like, yeah, nigger here. Like,
So I remember when I first started listening to him, right? I was like, oh, his stuff is really creative. And then years later, I clearly remember thinking, how does he come up with? I think there was a point when he was posting something like almost every day. And I'm like, how does he come up with such creative things every single day? So yeah, that speaks to that. It's like you have to keep creating, you have to keep evolving and stuff. But I think at the end of the day, you have to try your best to be you in no matter what you do, to do it the way that is most authentic to you. And I think when you're being authentic, you'll always have ideas that you can kind of fall back on. But yeah, that's a good one. Anticipating running out of ideas or things to talk about.
yeah.
Trudy, do you anticipate any problems?
I don't really have like any problems that I'm thinking about right now. It's more just like, okay, we just have to get started. Like we gotta, plan and figure this out. So I guess that's the issue, like realizing that, hey, you actually have to get this thing up and going. So that's something, I guess.
Yeah, so, and with anticipation, right, the way I prepared for this to kind of come at it is that the thing is, when you it's good to anticipate problems because then you can plan ahead for how you're going to overcome those problems. The worst thing is to be going in thinking that I'm not going to experience any hurdles, any obstacles. So that way you can kind of plan ahead. But just one of the things that, as I mentioned, the book I read for this last week is the same book by Mary Forleo, that everything is figureoutable. One of the things she said is you anticipate your problems so that you can prepare for it, but however, don't over prepare. What do you guys think about that?
That's a really good point about anticipating problems. And I was listening to a podcast, The Happiness Lab, and they had Michael Phelps' coach on, and he was saying Michael Phelps is an expert at visualization, right? Like every time he visualized him swimming and stuff like that, he visualized what he's going to encounter, anything like that. And then I think it was the 2008 Beijing Olympics in the 200 butterfly. So pretty much what happened is that once he dived in, his goggles filled up with water, right? And that's like a big thing if you can't see pretty much, right? And so he was pretty much doing the butterfly blind the entire time. So when he won, if you looked at him, you see that he wasn't very happy because it wasn't his best time. But the reason why Michael Phelps is so, and I was even more impressed by him, is that he got so bored at visualizing what he's going to do that he visualized every possible problem that he can encounter. So eventually he started to visualize how many strokes it's going to take me to reach from one end to the next. So even if he was completely blind, he knows exactly the amount of stroke it's going to take to get from one end to the next. So we have to visualize every possible problem that can encounter, because problems will come your way. It's a matter of visualizing it and being able to get past it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Every time Tarrie speaks, I just feel so motivated.
That's why you
has a motivational podcast.
For a motivational podcast. Yeah, like it's really important to anticipate problems, but the thing is, you don't want to spend too much time like planning every single thing because you'll never get started, right? And that's something that I like in latter episodes I would cover, but the main thing is just anticipate what are some of the issues that I can encounter so that you can be prepared for it. And one of the best ways to be prepared for problems or to be prepared to get started is to actually invest in what you're planning to do. So it's called getting some skin in the game, basically, like, putting something of value into it, right?
Get your skin in the game.
So for the podcast, have you guys invested anything into the podcast so far? Your podcast, not this one, but
No, because I was just thinking about all the money. Yeah, I've started developing a show outline.
Goodness.
And that really helped me to sort of, again, organize all my thoughts and get everything in like on paper and in nice and organized. On paper and just nice and organized. That's what my process has been.
Yeah,
thus
that's
far.
good.
What I've been doing is that I've been looking at a lot of different running YouTube podcasts, and I'm just seeing what they're doing, what is working for them, and I'm planning to implement some of it and be creative, like use my own methods. One of the things that I'm planning to invest, like those GoPro things, so like you can,
Run
so they
with
can
it.
see me running or
that's a good
whatnot.
idea.
So that's something that I'm planning to do. So that's where I'm at this stage.
What about you, Trudy?
What about you, Tarrie?
No, what about you?
No, what about you?
Are you do you have like the thing is for me with I think with this podcast, obviously we've invested a lot so far, right?
This
Yeah.
podcast.
But for our own podcast, I guess it's more so the time, right? Because the two main things you can invest, like the two main things, it's not the only things, but is your time and money, right? So the idea is that you should take some time or some money and invest it into that plan you have, because you're not going to want to do it to the point where you don't care about, where like failure is not an option if you don't have anything invested in it. So I think like we've been trying to invest time into it so that it gets to the point where, you know, failure is not an option. Like obviously a lot of the equipment and stuff we use for the first podcast, for this podcast, we're going to use for the next podcast. So there's not as much of a monetary investment, but it all counts, right? It's all part of the overall investment. So, yeah, it's all about like if you can, Terry, buy that GoPro, because once you do, you're going to know.
You gotta use it.
I gotta use it. I gotta make the most out of it. Like,
Yeah.
Troy, your light equipment and stuff that you have, you're like, okay, I have it now. I gotta use it. The camera, if you're thinking of getting a camera, whatever the case may be, once you get it, it's like, okay,
That's it.
I gotta use it.
I have
right?
to pay. I have to get enough money to pay this back. Like
Yeah.
that's what I have to do.
No, that's a good point, because I think one of the major reason why like I'm a little bit hesitant to start is like I don't have anything to lose, right? But if I do invest into it, if I do invest a lot of stuff into it, it's be like I have to do it, right?
yeah.
So that's a really good point.
Just
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
your skin in the game, man.
Just
Getting
your-
its skin in the
Skin
game.
in the
I feel like
game.
that's like a Caribbean
It
thing.
is. I feel like, get your skin.
Yeah, no, it's a really powerful concept, and just keep that in mind as we kind of continue. What about you, Trudy?
Yeah, that's something I need to work on, actually putting skin in the game. I guess I was looking at it as this podcast, you know, we put money into the mics, you put money into the, you know, the equipment. So that's why I think I have more of a focus on this podcast compared to the one we're working on,
Yeah.
because I feel like I don't really have skin in the game yet. So that's something I can definitely work on this week, try to figure out
And the thing
how
is,
to
right?
invest more in it.
That's a good point. But the thing is, we all have to remember that it's all part of the same sort of podcast universe. It's
Yeah.
the time and money or whatever investment, also the opportunity cost, like the time we could be spent doing something else, working on this whole podcast thing. It's all related. So yes, it's separate, but it's also in this
Connected.
case it's interconnected. The money, whatever investment we've done, it actually still applies to our own podcast, because that's time you could have been doing something else. One last thing I wanted to talk about was this is actually like a big thing that people have studied, like taking risks. It's basically a risk, right? Like if you went out and bought the GoPro, I don't know how much they cost, but let's say it costs like
lot of
They ain't
money.
cheap.
I know.
let's say it costs like $400, right? That's a risk you're taking, because you
Let's
don't
say.
you don't know what the reward would be out of that,
Yeah.
right? So in the book, there's actually a book called Skin in the Game by Nassim Taleb. It's an investment book, but one of the quotes that he said that I really wanted to leave with you guys is that he said, those that do not take risks should never be involved in the decision-making process.
Wow.
Because basically and he was saying that's a lot of sometimes part of the problem in like Wall Street and stuff, where the people that are making the decisions, at the end of the day, they're just going to get bailed out, so they don't have anything to lose. Whereas if a person genuinely has a lot to lose, he'll really he'll be careful and make wise decisions, but also he'll know, okay, I'll need to do all it takes to get it done. So if she invested all this money, she'll be like, yes, I gotta get it done, right? So just remember, like, put some skin in the game, but also that's gonna actually help you to be better prepared. That's what it's all about, because we're talking about being prepared here. If you have money, or if you have time, or if you give up on another opportunity to do this thing, it's gonna help you be better prepared. So
No, that's a really good point. I agree.
Yeah. And I like what you were saying with the whole concept of anticipating, you know, any difficulties or, any obstacles that may come up, because sometimes what we do is we just look at the big picture and we don't realize that, little things may actually, serve as like deterrents from us preparing fully, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess I can spin into my topic of Lego blocks. And
Yeah,
the thing
like,
Yeah,
what's that about?
yeah, Legos.
I'm
It's
thinking
like,
like,
what?
Like,
Lego.
building.
So we try our best to keep an element of surprise on the show. So we just on the day we actually say
What?
we know
What-
generally what we're preparing
Yeah.
for, but we just kind of say our words as we meet. And then Trudy was like Lego, and I'm like,
I wasn't sure.
what's
like,
going on?
Where are you going with this?
We had Lego and stupid, so I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So this would be interesting.
All right. So, guys, it makes sense, right? So,
Okay.
here's the thing. So, in the book that I read by Mel Robbins, which is called
Taking control.
Take Control of Your Life with Mel Robbins. So, she uses a concept which I thought was amazing. She said that sometimes we tend to look at the big picture. We're like, oh, the big picture. We got to get the big picture. But she's like, no. Sometimes when you look at the big picture, that can actually hold you back. Because you're just like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get, 10,000 downloads for my podcast?
yeah.
Yeah.
She's like, no, like scale it down. Like you don't need to get 10,000 downloads in one day. Rather, come up with little Lego block steps, right? So, when you use a Lego, it shows you the big picture, but you need to actually connect each little piece to make up the big picture. So that's what we need to do in preparation. We need to actually take these little steps that we can accomplish and work on that. And I found that to be really helpful, where I would set a goal for myself. So with the cover art for the podcast, I said, okay, what can I do today to actually work towards our podcast, to prepare? And I said, well, I can take some time and design the art, design the cover. And I was able to do that. It wasn't something too big. I didn't say to myself, okay, I need to come up with, some award-winning, what's the thing called, new and noteworthy cover design. No, I didn't want to set such a big goal. I said, let me just do a little sketch. And that one block I was able to accomplish. So that's something that I would encourage, the rest of us as a group. So just breaking that down, have you ever taken that approach where you either focused on one step, or did you look at the big picture and what happened?
For me, I'm always looking for the big picture. Like I haven't really taken that small step. Once starting off my podcast, I'm just thinking, how am I going to get so much download? I need, because, you need people to download you for you to keep going, right? So I'm just like, what am I going to do? How am I going to get there? But that's an interesting concept, which I should start applying, like just taking some small little steps to get there, right? Because it's not going to happen all of a sudden.
No. And the thing, sorry to cut you off, but when we look at the big picture, that can sometimes scare us and prevent us from going forward, right?
Yeah,
so when I read that, I was like,
that's
man, that's amazing. So if you break down that big picture you have into small, doable steps, that each day you're like, I know I can achieve this thing today. Day by day, you're working towards it. You're getting that big picture. How about you, Troy? Have you? Yeah.
Oh no, wait, Tarrie.
Yeah,
sorry.
Don't you love when someone says sorry to cut you off and then they still cut you off?
And then skip you.
Like, sorry to cut you off, Tarrie, but come on, tell me your idea. I want to
Yeah,
hear your
it's
idea.
kind of like
Yours.
kind of like,
It's okay, we love you, Tarrie.
do I exist, sir?
We love you, we love you, we love you.
But I was thinking that makes a lot of sense, and it actually makes it a lot easier, to be honest, because maybe if I think of the biggest possible picture, then it can cause me to become intimidated, and at the first sign of like obstacle, I can give up, right? Whereas if I'm like, okay, today I'm just trying to get this page done on the, like, I'll use the website, right? Today I'm just trying to get the About Us page. So I need, and by the way, I meant to say to you guys, can you guys send me a short bio of yourself. So today I'm just getting that about us.
Okay.
So let me just get Troy, Terry, Trudy, and myself, just something about ourselves and just have that in there. Whereas if I'm like, okay, I need to get this done before June whatever date or July whatever date, and I don't, then it's gonna and I make it so big, then it's gonna be much harder to do. But I like that little Lego step by
that
step.
little-
It helps you
Yeah.
overcome kind of like anxiety, fear, and those type of things.
Yeah, and that Lego idea sort of reminds me of this terrible joke, but it's like, how do you eat an elephant?
Yeah,
Yeah.
One bite at a
Yeah.
time.
One bite at a time, right?
yeah.
So you kind of have to do that mini stepping stone type of, take that approach to it, right?
Yeah.
No, every time you talk, you motivate me.
Thank you so much. I'm just trying.
Eat that elephant.
You better eat that elephant. But yeah, boy, that sounds so
You see that elephant? You can.
eat that elephant. But yeah, like you have to take that approach to it. You have to like, build it brick by brick. You have to
Yeah,
eat
bit
the
by bit.
elephants bite by bite. And one thing that I started doing for mine was I had this whole idea, but the way I approached it was the similar way I would approach my poetry. Like, so if I have a concept or an idea that I want to talk about, the best way to execute that is to do it line by line.
Yeah.
Right? And when you first do it, it's going to feel weird or awkward or whatever, right? But you just have to get all of your thoughts, all of your ideas out.
Yeah.
And then once that's done, you can always, they say writing is rewriting, right? You can always go back and edit it. Similar with your whatever project you're doing. Get the first one out there. If you notice, oh, there are problems with this or I don't like this, then you can always go back, edit it. Or like for the next one, you can just make adjustments. Like as you guys see, we made major adjustments.
Yeah, week to week. Yeah.
Yeah, to the first podcast, and even how we sound too. It's a lot different because we learned from last week's, right?
Yeah.
See how I'm just relatively related, like connecting all these relatively related topics. Anyways, but yeah, you definitely have to just take time and build up. Again, I agree with you fully, brick by brick, and eventually it's gonna pull through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the thing with taking it brick by brick, you can manage the brick, right? She was saying that you need to create a goal that you can actually do. So don't say something so big, like your step is like, I need to get 10 subscribers right now. What is the one little brick that you can do? And a quote that I wanted to read from the book is, she said, "The secret to getting control over your life and working towards your dreams is making one small bit of progress each single day on the things that matter most to you." So each day you should be doing at least one little tiny thing towards your goal and your project. So yeah, go.
That's powerful. It reminds me of something from this book that I think it was Malcolm Gladwell. Anyway, it's in multiple books, but it talks about like the 10,000 hour
Yeah,
rule.
the 10,000.
Or like just the concept of like if you do 1% every day, by the end of the year you will have gotten so much further than you were at the start. Like, so just taking incremental progress. It's like with weight loss. You don't lose like 100 pounds in like
One
in like
shot.
2 weeks or in a week. You lose a pound a day or half a pound a day for a period of time, and then when you look back after 6 months, people are like, Troy, is that you? Like you've gone down by so much. But it's the hard work you put in, changing your diet and stuff like that. Day by day, that makes a difference.
Like
right? So-
your ideal in your head is the perfect idea, but remember, it's all about progress, not perfection.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
that's a
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah.
You have to like constantly, I'm looking directly in the camera. You have to like constantly do something that's going to help you progress until you get to that ideal, perfect thing that's in your mind.
Yeah, I think this side of the room is like the motivational
I know.
side. You guys are like wise old sages, like Confucius and like Socrates and stuff. It's not about progress. It's not about perfection. It's about progress. Like,
That's how you do it.
we will have a cup with that on it.
So I'm going to leave you guys with this question, or ask each of you this question. What is one teeny tiny little step or brick that you can do this week towards, getting started with your podcast?
Wow.
Oh, I'm so happy you asked that, Trudy. So my podcast needs a bit of a logo.
Hi. The question was, what
What's
can
the-
you
you
do?
can do?
Okay.
One thing I can do is
Ask
ask
the
my
person.
sister, who is good at making
Man.
logos, to just hit me with a couple mock-ups,
Fine.
and we'll just we'll see how that goes from there.
Get to it.
That's a really good question, Julia, and it's something that I would implement this week. I have a lot of ideas for my podcast, like a lot, but I think I have to tailor it down and actually get the actual concept down pack and get the format down. So I'll slowly start doing, what am I going to talk about, the format of it.
Yeah,
I'll try and work on that this week.
that's good. Tarrie?
So for me, like I think all of you guys here, all of you write on your own. I know my brother likes to write like quotes like crazy. Remember, you always had that. I know Troy journals, and then definitely know Trudy does. But I haven't been doing that really, So, except for the last couple weeks, I started journaling. So, and I'm beginning to see there's a lot of power in like just writing down your thoughts and your ideas and stuff. So for me, it's more so about spending time this week, just laying a little brick each day of like spending at least half an hour to an hour just writing down ideas specific to the podcast. So I think by the end of the week, I would be able to look back and say, wow, I have all these ideas formulated that I didn't have before, because we have generally what we're going to talk about, from A to Z, but we don't have specifically, okay, for this. So I'm going to spend some time actually writing down things, because it does help. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm going to
What
do.
about you, Trudy?
So for me, I'm going to dedicate like half an hour each day towards the podcast, right? So just having that block of time, and put Timothy to sleep, everything is, nice, calm, and quiet. Just spend that half an hour thinking, planning, doing all of those things. And I think that's really going to help. And I would just throw this out to you. With your brick, you should try to have something in place where you're going to remember to do this thing. So in the book, she was saying that maybe set up a notification.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like put it in your
It's a
phone.
good
We do
idea.
that for everything now.
Yeah.
Like we have smartphones. So
Yeah.
put a notification, half an hour on journaling
Yeah.
for the podcast. So that's my last bit to you.
Always have some sort of it's basically accountability, but because in our society now we don't like connect with people on a personal basis. I mean, it's a kind of sad way of saying it. We use our phones and
Phone.
stuff to remind us rather
Like,
than
hey,
like
did you
your
do
your
this?
close friend or something like.
Yeah.
Now you have accountability, and it's good for people who don't have like a lot of friends or whatever.
That's very, very true.
Like you try.
That's why I'm like, it's just resonating with me.
It's a profound point.
And while we're on the topic of not having friends, one of the books that I researched this week was Do the Work by Stephen Pressfield.
Okay.
And that book is such a good book if you're trying to start anything or, develop any idea or anything, any creative thing, or just any business.
Anything.
Just anything.
Yeah.
Period. Anything, right? And he talks about enemies and allies, right? Now, for the enemies, he speaks of 3 specific enemies, which is resistance, rational thought, and friends and family, right?
Oh,
and
wow,
since those are the enemies, right? And since we are, again, going back to the whole of not having friends thing, here's what he says. The problem with friends and family is that they know us as we are. They are invested in maintaining us as we are. The last thing we want is to remain as we are. So on this new chapter of your life, you're going to have to prepare to know new people.
Okay.
What do you think about that quote? I'm putting
I
it
would
out
have
there.
never thought like the part about your family is invested in keeping you as you are.
Yeah.
I would never think that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
No, okay,
that's
think about
interesting.
okay, say if this person has they've been doing a lot of self-discovery and all that stuff, right? And their family knows them as this just 9 to 5 pencil pushing type of person, right? And they come and they're just like, listen, no,
It sounds
no
like they're
hate.
selling pencils. Like
Yeah,
pencil
they're pushing they're pushing pencils. Yo, you know about this 4B pencil, bro? But yeah, like you're like you're living your regular life and all that stuff, and your family knows you as that. They're accustomed to seeing you
They
just
wanna
living
keep
this
you like
basic
that.
life, and now you're coming and you're saying, "Oh, I want to be a dancer."
Yeah.
They don't see you as that, so they're just gonna be like,
You sure?
"Yeah, you sure? You? I mean, I've never seen you dance." And da 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 da. But
I guess that could happen with like close family members too. Like I can see that if it's like a spouse situation, they can be like, you're about to do this thing where you're not you've been working a 9 to 5, you're making like 40,000, we're happy. It's getting us by, and now you're gonna do this thing where yes, you can make a lot in the end, but you're not gonna make any money initially. So they might be more invested in you staying the same
Yeah.
and you staying at the current job you're at because it's like better for them overall. They're more comfortable with you that way, right? So,
Yeah.
and you do see situations like that happen.
Yeah,
I see it a lot in
happens.
movies and
It
stuff.
happens.
Yeah, in movies,
It's
yeah.
just it's something I never like put my finger on. Like, this is something that it can be a possible enemy, like
Yeah.
your family to do that. It's like,
Oh, Troy, you know what that reminds me of? Remember we did that book, Defining Decade?
Yeah.
And then she talked about your circle of friends.
Yes.
So the circle that are close to you, they're not gonna push you to grow as much as like you need help from someone on the outside. You need like your circle of friends, they only know the same circle of friends, right?
yeah, they're like
So
you.
if you need to meet
like-minded.
someone, let's say you need to meet someone in the motivational space. None of us are in that space. So
Exactly.
So we
like
can't
your
have
circle of friends, they're more they're good for social aspect. That's what she was saying in the book. They're good for the social, like, someone to talk to, friends, but not as much for growth to push you to that next level because they're more invested in you kind of staying in that comfortable space. It kind of reminded me of that
Yeah,
book
no,
too.
it's in the exact same vein because again, those people know you best, but you have to also remember, even though they know you best, you know yourself like better than anyone else does.
You would hope
Bestest.
Yeah,
you would
know
hope
yourself
so,
the
right?
bestest.
You would
Yeah.
hope so, yeah.
But yeah, you'd hope so. But yeah, go ahead.
But you know what I think? I think there has to be like an awareness as well. So let's say, for instance, within our family dynamic here. So if Tarrie says, I want to become
A singer.
a singer, right?
Well, that's a bad
I don't know. I was trying to like make it work. I don't know if I can do it.
Just take this away from me here. Yeah.
For those wondering, he
Yeah, I have.
really can. Troy is a singer. Terry, no.
Definitely not.
But let's say Tarrie said he wants to be a singer, right? Because we're aware that, people need to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We might actually be like, okay, Tarrie, give it a try. Like we
Yeah.
might push him.
Yeah.
But I think that comes with, understanding and
It
knowledge.
depends on your family.
As I'm
Yeah,
saying,
it
so like
depends
in
on
our
the
case,
family.
we would kind of do that.
And
but
actually, it
yeah.
makes me, you telling us this now, it's sort of like, yeah, that's so true. But it's also like to help me to know, okay, I don't want to be one of those people
enemy.
who
Yeah.
don't want to be, to help my family grow or my friends grow. Or if any of you, like as our listeners, sending that you have an idea or something you want to do, I don't want to be in that position where I'm like, are you sure you can do it? Maybe that's
discourage
not
you,
you or
yeah.
whatever. No, it's better to encourage. So you telling me that, I know, okay, it's turned on a kind of light in my head that, okay,
Eureka.
going forward, I have to make sure that I'm not that type of person who's not encouraging or who's not trying to help someone grow outside of their, you don't want to be the enemy.
Yeah.
basically,
No,
is
you
what I'm
don't.
saying.
Originally, when you made that comment, I'm like, but my family and stuff are always supporting me. But I guess I have to think outside of that, right?
Yeah.
Like, if I tell my brother, Trudy, you, my wife or anything, they're definitely going to be behind me. But now that you put it like that, it's like, yeah, it's true. Like certain families and stuff like that, they're just going to try and
They will
break
tear you down, yeah.
They will break you down,
Because
right?
I know of like I have a friend who she's like, yeah, I want to do this, da 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 da, and I'm like, all right, like go for it, right? And she's like, it's not that easy for me to go for it. I'm just like, what do you mean it's not that easy? And she's like, well, you know, people are constantly telling me I can't do it or whatever the case may be. And I'm just like, bro, like you are responsible for your life. Whatever you're going to do, like you have to live with that.
Yeah.
And if your family is, especially a family that's always like, oh well, you can't do this and you can't do that, like you're gonna have to sort of not cut them off, but like shed what they're saying, just like put it behind you, right? And move on and try your best to just believe in yourself and find people who believe in your vision as well.
And to be fair, sometimes the family is genuine with it, right?
Yeah.
They're not doing it from a bad
they're not coming from a bad place, but they also don't see the potential in you, right? So sometimes you, as you said, sometimes you just have to disregard that regard. Like so many comedians and stuff like that, they'll just be like, my family told me no, go into this, but I followed what I wanted to do.
It's funny you said that because I was thinking of bringing it along those lines. It's like in many cases where someone, they might have a goal where it's not exactly something you can put down on paper like, okay, I'm going to become a lawyer and I'm going to make X amount of money. And then one day actually pivot from that. Like, I want to go into this field where it's not as concrete of a field. Like, let's just be upfront. Like, let's say you want to go into something that's in the arts versus something that's more concrete, right? Where the family members, they have the best intention. They're like, well, why don't you do this? Because you're going to be guaranteed to make like
money.
50 grand, you'll be good and stuff like that. Versus something else where we don't know exactly how much you'll make. So one of the things I learned is that you have to know sometimes to tune out the white noise. So it's like there is good in what is being said, but take what's for you, and certain things you have to push it to the side, and also evaluate whether what the people are saying is coming from a place of love, like a good place, and whether or not it is the truth. But if it's not, if you genuinely believe that you need to prepare to do your best, then you can be like, you know what, I get where they're coming from, but that's not for me. I'm still going to pursue my dream, because even if they're coming from a good place, it could be it could kind of stop you from going.
And sometimes it's just their fear, right? It's not like, and it's not like a fear in like a negative way. It's more like, especially with your family, like they don't want to see you fail. They don't want to see
Especially
you fall.
Parents.
Like, you know,
Parents.
especially parents. So sometimes they might say or react in a certain way, but it's not from like a negative place. It's more just they're fearful. Like, I want to make sure my child succeeds. I want my child to do well. So my child saying that they want to become a comedian, it's just like, oh my gosh, we don't even know comedians. Like, how much do comedians make? Like, that's just their own fear. And
that reminds me of, I don't know if you guys know the story of like Joe Coy. He's a comedian.
Yeah,
the Filipino.
that's who I was thinking of.
He is such a funny comedian, but you listen to his story, like he was like my family was telling me, don't go into this, don't go into this, right? Like, this is, you're gonna end up like poor or whatever, right? And he remembers situations where he would have to like leave his kid with his mom in order to go out and like do comedy at night and stuff, right? And now he is so successful and, you know, such just a powerhouse of a comedian where he's able to like fill out full stadiums and stuff, right? And then he ended up buying his mama a house and all that stuff. But like, he believed in himself, even though his family was just like, don't do this or whatever. And like the mom also believed in him too, because I think she bought him a car or something like that. So like, even if your parents or your family is resistant, there are some who are gonna show that belief in you. They may not say it, but they'll just be like, all right, here's like $40 for this
like
thing.
Silent supporter.
It's like, do you have like silent supporters? So when you are making that decision to, you know, either listen to your family or like cut off certain members in that regard, also pay attention to those who are the silent supporters. Because they're also I think they're important. You know?
Of course, I agree with that.
I was just thinking, think about how many comedians, actors, or even doctors, lawyers and stuff like that who listen to family members and they're not that, right? They could have been doctors, they could have been lawyers, they could have been actors, they could have been comedian, but they listen to those family those friends who discourage them, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's sad when you think about it.
Yeah. So we're not saying that. Well, I guess Troy, but he's not saying that your families are enemies and
No,
stuff
Yeah,
like that.
no,
It's
no,
just
no,
you
no,
kind of
no.
have to listen to what's being said
Yeah.
and kind of know, okay, I want to pursue what I need to pursue. I need to prepare as much as I need to, but just kind of block out door.
And eventually, like when you start doing what you're doing and your family sees what you're doing, they're gonna like follow and they're just gonna be like,
Oh,
oh,
Yeah.
oh, he's actually good. She's
Yeah,
actually really
yeah.
good at this,
Yeah.
right? Like one thing that like I mean, I don't know if I ever shared this, but one night I invited my dad to a poetry competition that I was a part of, and he saw how the audience reacted when I was
Yeah.
on stage, and he was just like, okay, like
Mhm.
sometimes your family needs to be in the presence of that atmosphere that you're
yeah,
in
to see.
just to see, you know, like how other people respond to you. And
Mm-hmm.
when that response is a good response, then they'll be like, oh wait, these people are clapping
Yeah.
for my child, like what the heck? And then they'll start
Yeah.
to get
Come
it. So like
alongside.
at a certain point, and I think it's at a point where your idea or whatever you're developing is more developed, then you can probably share it with the family members who are harder to convince. But yeah, that's one of the enemies. But we're gonna move on. Another enemy that he spoke about in the book was rational thought. Right? He said that's one of our worst enemies. And he says, bad things happen when we employ rational thought because rational thought comes from the ego. Instead, we want to work from the self. That is, from instinct and intuition, from the unconscious.
Okay.
So with that, essentially what he's saying is we need to put our faith in the source of of like our creativity. So that thing that sort of urges you to, oh, you should do this. Always tap into that. Always go back and like check in with that thing that first gave you that initial idea. Yeah. What do you guys agree with that? Do you think
So rational
wrong?
thought, like
Going
meaning.
against rational thought?
So, but rational thought meaning where you think through everything and it has to have a logical, common sense, whatever approach and stuff like that. That can be a bad thing.
That can also be a bad thing because you can easily just be like, you can easily kill whatever dream that you have.
Yeah.
So give me an occupation or like a dream that most people have. Just throw one out there.
Yeah, doctor.
Okay,
Yeah, doctor,
doctor.
or lawyer,
A person can be like, okay, I want to be a
professional.
doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah. They'll be like, I want to be a doctor. But the schooling is too long. It's really, really hard.
It's expensive.
The success rate of people who go to med school versus people who are actually doctors is really, really low. And you can do all of that. Or you can go against rational thought and be stupid.
Yeah.
That's going into my other point, being stupid, ignorance and arrogance. And that's this point, guys. Hold on, I'm about to blow your mind.
So
You guys
while
see it?
you're
Yeah.
thinking about that, I was actually that makes a lot of sense because when you're applying for those professional schools or whatever, sticking to that example, I know from experience, like just dealing with other people and just personally, I know one of the things they show you a lot is like the statistics, or anyone who's been to college or university or anything, they're like admission rate or whatever, and you're thinking, okay, I want to go to Harvard or I want to go to the best school, and you see that they only accept like 10% of the people. So if you're thinking rationally, you would never apply. People who are thinking fully rationally would not apply because they'll be like, I have a 90% chance of not getting in. But if you cast aside that rational thought, you know what? I'm just going to do it because I believe in myself and I know I'm capable of doing it. That's how I can see that rational thought being an enemy, because it's like, rationally speaking, my chance of success is really low. So why don't I hedge my bets and not do that, right?
Yeah.
So I can see that makes a lot of sense.
And then one thing that, again, you have to remember, I said be stupid, but it's not be stupid, stay stupid. So the thing is, it says arrogance and ignorance are the artists and entrepreneurs' indispensable allies. She must be clueless enough to have no idea how difficult her enterprise is going to be and cocky enough to believe she can pull it off anyways.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
That's a really good point.
You're smiling.
No,
You
no,
really
no,
like-
no, no. I do, because it reminds me of the Bumblebee.
From Transformers?
No, just the
the
actual
insect.
Bumblebee, right?
Yeah.
It's so big.
Based on the body of the bumblebee and its wings, scientists don't know how
It flies.
it flies.
There you
But
go
the
again.
bumblebee is so stupid. It stays stupid.
It stays stupid.
It just doesn't understand I'm not supposed to fly. He just flaps his wings and fly. It's the same concept that we have to apply. It doesn't matter how difficult it is. Just do what you need to do.
Good analogy, man. That
Because
makes a lot of sense.
Either way, people. The reason why I say stay stupid and the reason why I say stupidity is one of our allies is because that's what people are gonna call you. They're going to be like, you're so stupid. Like, why are you're leaving this good job to go and chase your dreams? Like, what kind of?
It's so stupid.
You're
Why
so
are you starting
stupid.
up a podcast? There's so much
Exactly.
podcasts right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But no, stay stupid.
Okay, let me bring it to the podcast thing, because that's where we're on a podcast now, and I'm really excited with you bringing up this topic. You guys know I would think of the group of us, I am the one who tends to lean more towards the rational
Yeah.
more than anyone else, right? So I remember when like looking up stuff for the podcast, I remember seeing there's so many thousands of podcasts, right? And if you have this many downloads, like 150, you're like in the top 50% of podcasts. I remember seeing that, and how the number of podcasts keep increasing. And one of the things that really got to me is the size of the people who create podcasts. Now it's changed. Before it used to be individuals. Now there's a lot of like big corporations like This American Life and like Gimlet Media and stuff like that. Bigger entities, even like the Los Angeles Times and stuff, have their own podcasts. So, but the thing is, what I noticed is that what I was thinking rationally is, does it make sense for us to start a podcast where, if you look at it over and over again, everyone who's starting podcasts, it's going more away from I'm talking about the podcasts that make it onto New and Noteworthy, the bigger podcasts. I'm like, do we have a shot of getting there if we're not, one of the big production houses making? But if I was thinking, if I stay with the rational thought, then that would be a big discouragement from the podcast. Whereas thinking, okay, you know what? Yes, they can. I actually had this thought. I was like, yes, it's mostly big companies like CBS and stuff. However, if, for example, I'll use Joe Rogan. If he never said, okay, let me start a podcast anyway, his podcast would never get to that level. So there comes a point where you have to put aside that kind of thought, like put aside those obstacles and just be like, I'm going to do my best. And even if you're good for your niche, you're big in your niche, that's good enough. Like it's all about getting to a certain level where you're like, okay, I'm doing the best I can. And that's what I like about our group. We're doing the best we can to put forward a good product for you guys.
Yeah, and you never know what or how your idea is going to turn out, right? Another quote that he says is, the author encourages us to stay stupid, and then he lists a few people who he thought were stupid, right? And you would never really believe who was on his list. He said Charles Lindbergh, Winston Churchill, and Steve Jobs. And he says these guys are some of the dumbest guys that he knows. And he says, why? Because any smart person who understood how impossibly arduous were the tasks they had set themselves would have pulled the plug before they even began. So if any person knew, I'm going to start this phone company. I'm going to call it Apple. I'm going to have phones. I'm going to have iPods. I'm going to have this new thing called an iPad. And they're all going to be you're going to be able to copy on your iPad and paste on your phone. And well, anyone would just be like, you're an idiot. What are you talking about? You're not going to, you can't do this.
Yeah,
Wait, you can copy on the iPad and paste on the phone?
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, I'm new to Apple, so I'm just trying to learn.
This gets me excited because, with the tech stuff, Apple, when it first formed, like with the Macintosh and stuff. I remember when they transitioned over to the iPhone. I think it was '04 or something. They transitioned, and at that point, the most popular, well, one of the most popular was the BlackBerry.
Yeah.
They had,
yeah.
you guys remember they had the
Yep.
keyboard, and I was watching just last week some history of Apple and stuff like that. And when Steve Jobs announced the iPhone, he's like, okay, I'm going to show you this thing. This is going to be our phone. He showed it. A lot of critiques he got. Yes, there were people excited for it, but they were like, how can you have a phone that's for businesses, for everyone, without a keyboard? That's crazy. Because the Blackberries, they had the full keyboard, and that was their strong point. Now, it actually turned out to be the best part of the phone, because you have the touch interface and you can always update it. Whereas if a keyboard is,
Can't touch.
Yeah.
so it's like the same thing that was called stupid was actually one of the strongest points. They were called stupid for introducing a product like that into the market by some people, and now it's like the biggest selling phone in the world, right? So
Yeah, and we accredit the term genius to Steve Jobs. Now.
yeah. So
Right.
so it's like you flip the stupid
Yeah.
to become genius.
Genius.
Right?
So we
So
just gotta stay stupid, guys.
stay stupid.
And keep the arrogance that you can do it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Amidst what people say. And I know a lot of us, or just people in general, even those watching and listening, you've had experiences, even in terms of like your career and with schooling, where guidance counselors,
Yeah.
teachers
Oh,
are
yeah.
just like, oh, Troy, you definitely would not be able to become a XY.
Yeah.
No, like I had an exact situation like that. Like when I was in high school, my English teacher told me like, you can't write. Like you're not a writer.
Wow.
Stop
Yep,
writing.
yep.
Right. Cut to me when I'm like 21, winning poetry competitions.
Yeah.
The
Yep.
first time I enter it. Right. Cut to me now in school, doing like writing scripts and stuff, right? And like getting 101% on it. That I would never forget that. Like, okay, so this is a little story, but in my school we had a professor, I won't say her name, but like a lot of the students knew her to be a tough marker, right? Like a tough professor. I have this weird outlook on life that when a lot of people say something is hard, I want to challenge that. Like I'm not gonna have that mindset of, oh, this is gonna be hard, I can't do this. I'm gonna be like, nah, I can do this. Like I know you guys say you can't do it, but I know I can do it, right? So I went in with that mindset, and then I wrote my script for my professor, and the woman loved the script. Like she loved it so much so that she gave me 101%.
Oh,
I
wow.
never got 101% in my life on anything, but like it was such a powerful moment because I had a professor tell me
That you can.
you can.
Validate.
A teacher, a high school
Yep,
teacher
yep.
tell me you cannot write.
But
Then I had a professor tell me you can.
right?
Yeah.
well, that's the thing. Like, it happens to a lot of people, and I'm sure most people, even those listening, have had experiences where someone has kind of counted you out and said it's not,
Yep.
you're not capable. Now, the tricky part is to not actually buy into that and believe what's being said about you, to believe what you know to be yourself with hard work. Like, we'll never say that you can just do things. You have to put in the work, right? But with hard work, if you know, okay, this is something I'm determined to be successful at, with hard work, you can get it done. As I guess, to tie back to my book, everything is actually figure out, but you can find a way to do it. You just got to put in the time, energy, effort, and work that you need to get it done, because it's something that we hear over and over, where high school teachers or
Guidance
counselors, guidance
Guidance
counselors
counselors, yeah.
have told people, okay, you can't do this. And
I think they need to
and
get
in
rid
the
of that
future-
job in the high school.
And
No,
in
I'm serious.
For
They need to get rid of
For
that
real.
job. Like, who are you? Like, what credentials do you?
You're a guidance
Yeah.
counselor.
Like,
Okay,
that's-
so all our guidance counselors out there.
okay,
we
if
love
you're a
you.
guidance
If you're
counselor,
good.
sorry,
No, like, the
just
thing-
change your approach.
yeah, like we're not like trying to bash guidance
No.
counselors, but we're trying to bash those ones who tell
bad
kids
ones.
you can only do this or you
Yeah,
can
no.
only do
Can't-
that.
Don't
Like,
why
limit
say
someone.
that? Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
one thing that I always remember is there are jobs coming out right now that like there are jobs coming out in the future that only our kids will be able to do.
Yeah.
yeah.
we can't even think about what those jobs will be. So like the idea of having a guidance counselor
To
guide someone's entire life.
Yeah.
Like you don't know what the future holds.
No.
You don't know what skills Tarrie has that
Nope.
that will apply to the future jobs. And like you don't you have no idea what that is.
Well,
So-
podcasting wasn't around 20 years ago.
exactly,
Right?
right?
So,
Exactly. So
no guidance counselor when I was in high school could have said to me,
podcaster.
yeah, it could have said, okay, they can't see that, right? Even maybe even you when you were in high school, it wasn't. I know you're much younger, but
Yeah.
it wasn't a big thing back then, right? That it is right now. So,
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I think the two that you talk about, the stupidity
The
and arrogance, like that's powerful. You need the two of them to go hand in hand,
Yeah.
because that arrogance is what's gonna push you to keep going towards whatever the thing is that people are saying you're stupid for wanting to try. Right?
Yeah, it's
So-
gonna boost you up. It's gonna be that thing that's gonna be like, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
Even though people are like, you're dumb, you're stupid, don't do it. Keep that arrogance, keep that stupidity. Like, nah, I'm going to keep on doing it. Cause rational thought would be like, okay, my teacher told me I can't write. I'm gonna
can't.
stop writing.
Yeah.
I can't,
That's
yeah.
the rational thing to do, right? Because this person who has a degree in literature or whatever is telling me who doesn't have a degree, I can't do it.
yeah.
What I bring to the table is completely different than what he brings to the table. So like
Oh,
you can't really, again, with art too, if any, I have to stress this enough. If anybody has been told you can't do something, especially if it's in the field of art, please don't listen to them and please consider trying it again. Like please consider trying
I would honestly, I would take what you said and apply it to any field. Like,
Yeah.
because if you think about it in any field, I'm telling you the only difference between, like, I've been around some really smart, as they say, people. The only difference is those guys, they work really hard.
Yeah.
So it's all achievable. You can always figure out a way to do it, but you just got to put the work in. You have to be willing to do that. So I think I agree with you on the field of art, but I think it applies to your comment applies to pretty much any field. Don't let someone determine the doors you choose to knock on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You choose to knock on
Yeah.
those doors, and if you get shut down and it's something you still want to do,
Just
keep
create
knocking.
your own.
Mhm.
Or
There's
create your
so
own,
many
or work
doors.
around
Yeah.
it. You can keep going. You can get it done.
There's so many doors. Just
Yeah.
keep going.
And as a supporter, like we've worked with like young people, youths, like for many number of years, and that's one thing I'm always big on. I'm like, I don't care what they come and say. Oh, I want to become a garbage man. All right, we're doing this. You want to be a
Yeah.
garbage
Yeah.
man? This is what we got to do. Let's research and see. Okay, garbage men need to have this license and this and that. You go and get it. I don't believe in telling anyone they can't do anything, because you never know.
Yeah.
You're gonna end up looking like the fool
Oh, yeah.
if
the
they
end.
end up blowing up in whatever it
That's
is.
true.
So support
That's true.
no matter what, unless
man.
it's something like detrimental to harm them. Then you can stop, but support. You never know what's gonna happen.
Like
right?
when I win my Oscar, I'm definitely calling out that teacher. Like I'm calling him by
Calling
name.
name,
Calling him by name. Like, sir, you said I can't do it, and look, I just got an
name
Oscar for
and
best
shame.
writer. Yeah.
Name and shame.
Yeah.
That's what it's called.
Yeah. And I'll still be respectful. I'll say sir. I'll call him sir, but I'll be like, nah, I got an Oscar for best screenwriter. Boom.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Williams, you heard it here first.
Dottie Williams. So yeah, what's your
So this actually ties in perfectly with my topic. It's on difficulties. What I want you guys to do, and this goes out to our listeners as well, I want you to think about one of the most difficult things that have happened to you. And I don't want you to mention it. We'll come back to it at the end. But,
Okay.
and also, I'm going to name some names for you guys. Damon John, Richard Bronson, Jamie Oliver, and the IKEA founder. I'm not going to pronounce
Yeah, his
his
name is
because
really.
it's really... and my question for you guys, what do you think they all have in common?
They're men.
They're white men.
Well, Damon
Damon John.
Okay, well, no, sorry, I don't know. I don't. At the record show, I don't know.
He's the black guy on
Fubu.
He's a Fubu.
Shark Tank.
He's
He
Shark
formed
Tank.
Fubu, yeah.
Let the record show I'm still a black person, and I knew who that person was. Yeah.
Yeah, they're all in business. Like, that's what I'm thinking. Entrepreneurs.
They've
Yeah.
all, I don't know, failed massively.
Overcame somehow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you guys are on the like obviously they're multi-millionaires.
Yeah.
True, yeah.
Yeah, they're all entrepreneurs. But here's a great thing. Well, here's one of the things. They all had dyslexia growing up.
Okay.
Oh wow.
So they all have. So Troy, because I certain words for my listeners, for our listeners, I struggle with. So anytime I tap you, I want you to mention that word for me, dyslexia.
Okay,
Because I struggle with it at times.
Dyslexia.
Okay. So in the book, right, that I mentioned last week in David and Goliath, he posed a question: would you wish
Dyslexia.
on your child? And obviously,
No.
most people will say
No.
no, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, I will say no as well. But what dyslexia does, it actually
Hey, you got
hey,
it.
I said it.
Yeah.
It actually create like in terms of entrepreneurs, a large percentage of entrepreneurs are
Dyslexic.
yeah. So 5 to 10% of individuals in general suffer from,
Dyslexia. Wow. Got it. I got it, guys.
and 35% of company founders identify themselves as,
Dyslexic.
compared to 15% of the general population.
so it's-
So generally speaking,
Wow.
entrepreneurs and business who are very successful, they suffer from.
Dyslexia.
Okay. Do you guys know why that is though?
Because they have to
Trudy.
overcome. And no, I'm just like, wow, it's
She's in that
amazing.
field,
No,
so I
not
just
just
looked
that.
at
Not
her,
just
I'm just
that.
like-
No, because the book I read, Mel Robbins, she was also someone who, in her adult life, she actually realized she had dyslexia. And and she was saying her son also has dyslexia too,
Wow.
right? So she talked about that in the book. So after I was smiling, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so true. We may think it's like a setback or a handicap, but it actually forces you to think creatively and to navigate through, those difficulties
Wow.
that you have in school, especially, right? Because they face a lot of challenges there.
It's true.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm glad I came to work today. This is really good.
Good, yeah.
This is really good to know.
Yeah, it's exactly what Trudy said. Pretty much the reason why so much entrepreneurs and successful people
Dyslexic.
is because they had to overcome so much challenges, so much difficulties growing up, right? Like they when they're learning, they can't learn the way that most people do. And even though in school and stuff like that, they're cast aside and they call stupid or
Stupid,
whatnot.
Yeah. Stay stupid, man.
But in reality, a lot of them are actually really intelligent, and a certain part of the brain they have to develop. So even when they go out in the business world, even when they're growing, they know how they're great at communicating. They're great at different aspects, and that's what they need to be entrepreneurs, right? So my point that I'm leading to is that regardless of whatever difficulties you had in the past, it's actually preparing you to succeed going forward.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
very powerful because I always think about all those success stories of like those people who literally lost everything just before they ended up making it. Like I think of the guy from Pursuit of Happiness.
Oh, that
Will
Will Smith.
Smith.
plays,
Yeah, that Will Smith played, but he had nothing.
And that's based on a true story,
that's
right?
based on a true story. He had nothing, and then he kept on fighting and pushing, and then eventually he ended up being like a multi-billionaire. I think no, I don't know if he is a billionaire, but I know he
ended up being
a
quite
multi-millionaire.
successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very successful,
Yeah.
right? So like he had that, as you're saying, difficulty, but he kept going. He kept doing it.
This really makes me think the things that we all think are disadvantage, they can actually be used, or they can be advantages. As you mentioned, I would never say, okay, if you know those things where they're trying to get people to, well, people are trying to choose the traits for their kids, right? The kids that are going to be born and whatever.
Designer babies.
Designer babies.
Designer baby.
I don't think anyone would design or choose, okay, I want to give my kid dyslexia or,
Learning difficulties.
some sort of learning
Yeah.
disorder or whatever the case may be, but it actually can be, it causes them to be more creative in other areas. Right?
It pushes them to think outside of the box, right?
Yeah.
They don't follow the traditional way of learning. They don't follow the traditional way of thinking. So it's definitely the difficulties that they had, they used to their advantages.
And the flip side that people tend to not look at is you would say, oh, yeah, but I would want my child. So let's say using the example Tarrie gave, would you want your child to have dyslexia or would you want them to be gifted? A lot of parents are like, I want my child to be gifted.
Of course, yeah.
But studies
I know
have
where you're going with
shown,
that, too.
studies have shown that a lot of kids that were labeled as gifted, you would think that these gifted people should be the CEOs and the big, people. No. Why? Because they went through life where it's like you were excelling all the time. You're like, I
It
can
came
do this.
so easy
It
for
was
you.
so easy.
Yeah,
School
once
was
the
so easy.
difficulty comes,
Then that just
bang,
slams you on the face, and you're just like, oh my God, and
Yeah.
you just stay down, right? Because you haven't learned over the years how to overcome difficulties,
How to fail.
how to, so it's
So one of the things that I struggle with is, like, as I mentioned, like, it's hard for me to pronounce certain words. That's why I got tried to say.
Dyslexic.
And I'm sure growing up, if I did had that test, they probably would have categorized me as that. But because it was hard for me to, like, read and understand certain things, I took my time when reading, right? So even now, even if I read something, I don't have to read it twice, because once I read it once, because I take my time to read it, it sticks with me. So even though that may be like a difficulty, like a hindrance, no, it's actually a positive for me.
Yeah.
So going back to our first question, to the first thing that I asked you guys, one of the most difficult things that you've been through, do you think, just looking back at it now, has it been a benefit for you?
I think so because, and I'm just thinking in general, whenever you have something that is difficult, it forces you to think outside the box. It forces you to think you don't approach it in the conventional way. You have to approach it or come at it at a way that will work best for you, right? And that's where your individuality comes in, and that's where, your own unique style and flow or whatever it is comes into whatever you're creating. So I think, yeah, I agree with that. Definitely having some kind of challenge will definitely benefit whatever you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense in the sense of, one, as human beings, I feel like we are good at adapting to situations. And if you have sort of a shortcoming, you got to figure out a way to adapt and to get around it. I'm sorry, this is making me think of certain challenges you might face because of, like, your status or economic background, or even your race, right?
Let's talk about
So
that.
you have to learn to adapt and get around that. So
How would you go about adapting to, like, let's say, I don't know, if it was a financial thing, how would you go about adapting to that? Or no, let's use something more common, like a race thing. How can you adapt to, like, you're trying to make it in a specific field, but it's dominated by one race?
Well, going back, one of the examples that I think is really good is Tyler Perry. Because this whole field, the film industry is predominantly white, right?
I can tell you that for sure.
But Tyler Perry, he created his own niche. He's like, okay, I'm not gonna tailor to was white. Like, I don't like Tyler Perry movies, to be honest.
Let the record show I like Tyler Perry.
I like Tyler Perry.
Tyler, if you're listening.
But
Please come on our podcast. I'm joking.
but
Wait, no,
Yeah.
I'm not joking. I don't know
no,
what you're saying.
it would be good if you came.
It'd be really good.
but he created his own style, his own niche. He actually created his own niche, right? And now he's creating money for black individual. He realized that he's going to create his own black film industry. So if dominate, if your race is not in it, just create your own path, create your own structure.
Yeah, I think, and when you do create your own lane, then you're able to sort of, create your own rules. And yeah, you're good, Trudy. You're good. You're able to create your own rules, and you're able to, essentially dominate the game, because that's exactly what Tyler's doing right now. Like, he has his own film set, like his own studio, basically, right? And it's recording, Trudy.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's recording.
Yeah.
No, it's recording now. Yeah.
You
good.
started it.
Yeah. So basically, let me just explain for the listeners. We are filming on 3 different cameras. We're filming on 2 iPhones and 1 DSLR. So if you're watching, you're gonna see like either I get up and like go and reset the camera, because the camera that we have it currently only does 20 minutes.
For now, it's gonna get better.
Yeah, for now. Like we just wanted to start, right? And we have 2 iPhone cameras, and like if you see the setup, you know what? I'm gonna take a picture and post it on our Instagram so you guys can see this. But it just goes to show, like,
You gotta be creative, man.
you have to be creative. Like,
Gotta be creative.
touching on what Terry's saying with, like, even though you may have like dyslexia, or you may have something that's classified as like a disability or whatever it is, right? Like, we don't have 3 cameras, but we're able to still produce.
We don't
content.
have the tripod, but
Yeah.
we
Yeah, like you guys
do
saw the
what you gotta
picture.
do.
You saw the picture.
Jerry rig everything, right?
It's shameful, but it's fine.
It's not shameful. I'm proud of this innovation.
But yeah, you have to be able to, as you were saying, use what you have, and even though it's not the best quality, or you may have a quote unquote disability or whatever it is, still use that to your advantage and kill it.
And even in that, you can still make stuff like good quality, as like Troy just mentioned our setup, but you can see from the visuals, like for those of you watching on YouTube, you can see that the quality is still like really good. Like if he doesn't take that picture, you probably wouldn't know how our setup exactly is, right? But just to go back to your question, I think one of the things, and I know I keep saying the word work, but you often hear this saying, like, you have to work twice as hard to get like halfway there. So just kind of knowing what your where you're starting, how far back you're starting, that lets you know how hard you may have to work. So for example, those entrepreneurs you mentioned, they are at a disadvantage to start, or we think they are. But because of that, they have to be more creative. They have to work harder. So if you're starting at a lower position in life, it just means that you have to put in extra work to get there. Yeah. So that's how I would kind of, to answer your question, that's how I would kind of talk to someone who's in a situation like that. Okay, well, I'm not the same as you. I don't have all these resources or whatever. Or we're trying to start our podcast. We don't have like a mixer or whatever. Do the best with what you have and work hard to make up for that deficiency you're starting with. So that's what I would say.
So just to wrap it up, just know that your difficulties that you had are preparing you for the future.
Okay, I like that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So thanks guys. This was a really enlightening discussion today. Just kind of learning that preparation phase, right? In getting started. It's the second phase, that preparation stage, just kind of seeing how it all comes together. I initially started by talking about anticipation, kind of be prepared for obstacles you might come about. And I think it all kind of relates, because Trudy talked about, yes, you might anticipate a problem, but how are you going to tackle it? You're going to take it step by step by step, right? And as you're doing that, people might observe. They might say, okay, well, Troy, you're being foolish. You're stupid for what you're doing. There's no way you can get it done. Stay stupid.
Stay stupid.
Yeah. I never thought at the start of the day that we would be telling people to stay stupid and be arrogant, right? We often paint those words in a bad way. But in this light, it's like, yes, stay stupid and do what you need to do. And even if the things you encounter might appear to be a disadvantage or something you can't accomplish, know that your disadvantage is actually setting you up to be successful.
So thanks for joining us today on our Relatively Related podcast.
And watching us on YouTube, and smash that like button.
Yeah, just smash the heck out of it, please. And make sure you review on iTunes, guys. We need you to review on iTunes. Give us 5-star reviews. Anybody who gives us 4-star is kicked out of the family, and that's just it, right? Is that
You're disowned.
Yeah, you're disowned. We don't want.
I like that, Troy. And guys, please do not forget to comment and let us know which of the 4 concepts we discussed today really resonated to you. Which of those 4 words really stood out to you?
Yeah, because again, they're all relatively related, and we want you guys to, just let us know which ones hit you, because I mean, even though they are, very different, we all experience it at whatever point. Yours was.
Mine was, I can't remember.
It's okay.
Oh my God.
Just say.
Mine was anticipate.
Anticipation. Trudy was
Legos.
Mine was stupidity. Yours was
Difficulties.
right. So again, they're all relatively related, just like all of us. So make sure you take some time this week and just let us know which one resonated with you the most. Okay. All right.
Bye.
See you next week, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.